Um, Beck, let's talk. What are we all doing here today?
Well, we're here to talk about purpose, and what a fantastic thing to be talking about. Every year for the last decade, actually over a decade now, the lovely Mick Cronin, who is a dear friend and the CEO of Rebuild, I think many of you would know him. Every year, Mick and I do a talk about finding our purpose. Those of you who know Mick know that he still has a very, very strong Irish accent, and he's always talking about finding his porpoise. Not at the aquarium, but in the social enterprise sector. And one of the things that we often reflect on in those talks is what it's like when you finally find your purpose within the social enterprise sector. And in my own case, I know that I finally found my purpose thumb wrestling a tiny little homeless boy in Vietnam in 2001. And that was the trigger for me following my heart from my great career in science to an even greater career in social enterprise. And I haven't regretted that for a moment. And I'm guessing you, like many of us, have probably changed your career to come across and have more purpose. You might have also changed states, you might have changed countries, but you know what it's like when you find it, how precious it is when you find your purpose. You don't want to let it go, and you never, ever want to take a backward step. But in my personal view, 3 weeks ago, we took a really big backward step as a nation, and I just really want to acknowledge that here today. I think many of us have got broken hearts with what happened in the referendum. So what I wanted to say to all of our First Nations peers that are gathered here today with us, we stand with you in the voice, the treaty, and the truth processes. We'll continue to walk with you in solidarity for as many years as it takes, and until every last gap has been closed. Your fight for justice is also our fight for justice, and we want to keep you absolutely central to our purpose as a sector. My personal belief is that there is no purpose economy in Australia unless you are at the beating heart of it. And I can't begin to imagine what it's like when we collectively put purpose and yourselves at the centre of our circle, and we sit side by side, you sharing your 60,000 years of wisdom about what it means to put purpose in the middle of economic activity. So on that note, I just would love to give the warmest welcome to Desmond Campbell. And he's a Gurindji and Aliwa Nakan man from who works with absolute passion to make sure that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities achieve control and also self-determination. He's also the CEO of the Certified Social Enterprise Welcome to Country. And I really want to thank you for being here, Desmond. You're amongst friends and allies today, and I really hope you feel our collective love here. So welcome to you, Desmond.
Thank you, Beck, and thank you, Social Traders. Thank you for the acknowledgement of the referendum. And I will now go into an acknowledgement of country myself and touch a bit on that as we enter into the summit. So, Naikagen Nalakanalawa, Naika Gojak, Naikagen Gurindji, Naika Jungala, Guganini Desmond, Naika CEO, welcome to Country Gin. I am a Nulakan person. I'm a Gurindji Alawa person. My name's Gojok and Jungla, and I am the CEO of Welcome to Country. I was asked to provide an acknowledgement of country at this event, the Business for Good Summit, Shaping the Purpose Economy. The name Welcome to Country, I just want to clear up because it might be a bit confusing for some people that I'm doing acknowledgement of country and not a welcome to country. The name Welcome to Country is the social enterprise, not-for-profit that I work with. I'll go into a little bit of that a bit more soon, but the name Welcome to Country, as we work across many different Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander countries across Australia, this name represents that, bringing people, inviting them onto land, onto these different countries and sharing culture and language. But before I go into that, I want to do an acknowledgement. So therefore, I'd like to pay my sincere respects to the Gadigal people on whose land that I am meeting from today. I want to pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and acknowledge the continued connection and caring that they have to their lands and their waters. I want to especially pay my respects to their continued generosity in inviting people onto their Gadigal country and offering them friendship and mateship. In my intro address, I introduced myself and my country in my language. I'm a visitor of Gadigal country. Having moved here almost 1 year ago, I have had the privilege of meeting some Gadigal elders and connecting them to ensure some Gadigal elders and connecting with them to ensure that our social enterprise at Welcome to Country is able to operate culturally appropriately when representing Gadigal businesses, as we do and hope to do across all of Australia. I wanted to pay my respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining the summit. I could see in the chat that there were a few Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining the summit, so it's important for me to also pay my respects to you. As I've said, I am the CEO of Welcome to Country. As Beck touched on, Welcome to Country is a certified and social enterprise, which is First Nations led and operated. We're a profit for purpose organisation. We tick all the boxes, so make sure you connect your procurement officers with us because we'll be able to meet those needs. Welcome to Country works with over 210 First Nations businesses or entrepreneurs all across Australia in the tourism and retail industries. We connect over 120 different cultural tourism experiences and over 3,000 First Nations products to Australia and the world. Welcome to Country aims to champion the growth of wealth and success within Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities. We want to support economic self-sufficiency, improving self-determination and preserving and passing on culture on our terms. We are driven by social impact. Our impact meant $1 million was channeled back through our business to these businesses and entrepreneurs in the financial year 2022 and 1.3 million in financial year 23. We can only continue to build on this impact with the support of corporates, government, NGOs, and people like yourselves on the screen, where you're able to provide us with that platform and advocate on behalf of our vision. Now, I'd like to take a slight gear shift, so I hope you'll stay with me. I was asked by the event organisers to do a Welcome to Country before the 14th of October. Before the results of the referendum, where we saw 90% of Australia ultimately decide the future of around 3% of the most vulnerable Australians. According to Reconciliation Australia, an acknowledgement of country is an opportunity for anyone to show respect for traditional owners and the continuing connection of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people to country. An acknowledgement of country can be offered by any person, and like a Welcome to Country is at the beginning of a meeting, speech, or event. I'm not Gadigal. That is why I'm not doing a Welcome to Country. This is why I'm doing an acknowledgement of country. However, after the 14th of October, I struggled to understand what was the most appropriate way to address today. Many Aboriginal people are feeling sad, feeling shock, are feeling denial, numbness, anger and guilt, blame. They're feeling all the emotions of grief except one emotion, and that's relief. I'm not sure if we'll ever get there, but it's the only emotions of the cycle of grief that we're not feeling right now, and we're feeling everything else. Everything that I'm certainly feeling. I struggled leading up to today and many times almost cancelled, to be honest. It didn't seem right to provide an acknowledgement of country, especially to a room of probably mostly non-Indigenous people. However, as the famous song goes, from little things, big things grows, which sings about my Gurindji mob, which sings about my great-great-grandfather, Vincent Lingiari, sings about leading the Wayfield Walk-Off in the Northern Territory, a movement joined by many people from around Australia who joined and held hands with Gurindji people and fought a white rich man from England who had the title of Lord. This Lord Vesti stopped him from continuing to steal the land and force slavery onto the Gurindji people. And then I think about my Nullagin tribe and the history of their domestic and international trading in the Northern Territory of Arnhem Land, in the Arnhem Land region. Through this trade, they built relationships, exchanged cultural practices and language. Businesses wasn't transactional, but it was relational. It was trade that happened not only between domestically neighboring tribes, but with the Macassans, the Indonesian people, and many more. There's history and evidence of trading with Chinese as well. This is my foundational experiences and why I turn up today. And it's also important to be respectful to Gadigal people and continue to acknowledge from one Aboriginal person to them that I am on their country. Working at Welcome to Country allows me to be around amazing people offering to share their culture and their language on their terms. I work with an amazing team that's majority Aboriginal and or Torres Strait Islander, from the board through to our leadership team through to our staff. The oldest cultures and languages the world has ever known is on offer from people that are not only at Welcome to Country, but many of those Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander businesses that are joining us on in the summit today. This is why I keep going after the 14th of October. And I keep going because my Gurindji and Nullaghan tribe's legacy and generosity will continue through me and will continue to be offered to Australia. I acknowledge and thank Gadigal. I acknowledge other First Nations people in the room and the countries that they're joining us from today. To everyone else that's joining, it's now your turn to show the same patience, kindness, humbleness, generosity towards your First Nations people. And I thank you for listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Desmond. That felt like an incredible privilege to hear. And we really thank you for showing up today, despite the result and the obvious cycle of grief and feelings that brings. I would like to acknowledge on behalf of Social Traders, Wurundjeri Woiwurrung elders, the land on which we reside here in our headquarters, and also invite anyone in the chat who has yet to acknowledge country to do so. Desmond, thank you again. And please, I hope you recognise the allyship and solidarity that is on this call today and our commitment as a sector to continuing to learn from First Nations. So next up, it is my pleasure to introduce Social Traders' fearless leader, the one and only Tara Anderson. For those of you who don't know Tara, she is a for-purpose CEO, director and MBA with experience across charities, social enterprise, intermediaries and social innovation in Australia, UK and Europe. A pragmatic idealist, passionate about blending business and purpose, Tara is always focused on building the for-purpose sector, innovating business models, designing new revenue streams, developing brands, and importantly, building collaborations for increased impact. And for me personally, I'm incredibly proud to be on her team. So Tara, I'm going to hand over to you.
Thanks so much, Miranda. Lovely introduction. Right back at you. Proud to feel part of the Social Traders team and all the wonderful people that work with us and work in this sector. And Desmond, I just wanted to say thank you for that beautiful welcome or acknowledgement of country. And on behalf of Social Traders to say that we acknowledge the First Nations owners of the land, and I acknowledge that I live and work on the sacred sovereign land of the Wurundjeri people, and we acknowledge that this sovereignty was never ceded. We pay our respects to elders past, present, and to all Aboriginal people. We acknowledge that we're occupiers. We acknowledge that though we're born here, we come from a history of occupiers who've yet to reconcile with First Nations people. And at Social Traders, we stand for a future of shared mutual respect and partnership with the Indigenous peoples of this country. We supported a voice to Parliament. And while Australia voted no, and I can't imagine the heartbreak that you feel and that we feel too for that outcome, we remain committed to reconciliation. We do what we can in our context. We've just published our Reconciliation Action Plan, and we've just done a review of our certification framework to make sure that it's inclusive of Aboriginal businesses. And we're implementing some new recommendations in the coming months. So know that I and Social Traders and the people on this call and the millions of Australians that did vote yes will keep working hard to make things right, and that we accept yours and others, First Nations people's generous invitation to walk beside you in this work for a better future. We keep going. If this sector is nothing else, it is passionate and resilient and courageous, and we apply that as much to our work with First Nations people as anything else. So welcome everyone to the annual Social Traders Summit. It's fantastic to have you all with us for the 10th year of the Social Traders Summit and Awards. This event was a sold-out event with nearly 800 people registered, and we've got people from every state, every territory, right across the social enterprise and social procurement community. And we've been running these awards and summits since 2013, and this is our biggest ever year. So it really shows the momentum we're seeing behind social enterprise and social procurement, and it's really, as we say at Social Traders, it's catching on. We've been working to build a thriving social enterprise sector at Social Traders for the last 15 years. We certify and support social enterprises, and we work with business to unlock the value that exists in their supply chains to deliver on ESG commitments. And we work with government to create supportive policy around social procurement and social enterprise. We're here for all the leaders across social enterprise and business that are doing the messy and fun work of blending business and purpose together, because this is where the fun stuff is. This is where the good stuff happens. So it's really exciting to be here today because it's all about celebrating the power of social enterprise and the pioneers in the social enterprise procurement sector and the progress we're making together. So on the one hand, in the social enterprise world, we've got the thousands of people that are using business as a tool for the benefit of people and planet. And at a time when traditional business is being challenged to think about ESG and sustainability, social enterprises is a proof point that blending business and purpose is entirely possible. And then in the business and government community, we've got hundreds of champions working on the inside, doing the hard work of changing practices and mindsets to build in purpose, into supply chains, into strategy, into policy, into practice. These are the intrapreneurs, and we see you. And we're really grateful to have you as part of the team around Australia that's working towards a more purposeful economy. Because as a collective, we're starting to change the game. We're seeing really exciting progress. We don't get many opportunities like this to come together. And sometimes it can feel a bit like we're out on a limb on our own in this kind of work, or that we're not going far enough or fast enough. So just take a minute to look around the people in this room, scroll through that screen, see the hundreds of others that are here, the hundreds of people that share this same agenda, because together we're strong. And everyone that's here today is one of the pioneers, the people that don't accept that the traditional capitalist model is the only way to run an economy, who aren't okay with the knowledge that in such a wealthy country like Australia, there's still people who are making a choice between putting food on the table or turning on their heating. And you're the people that are doing something about it. You're changing the way business thinks and how business is done with purpose baked in. You're all helping to build a fairer and more equitable Australia. You're here with your people today. Thank you for taking the time to join us. So a bit about what to expect. The theme of the summit, as we've talked about, is shaping the purpose economy. So it's all about exploring how we can use the tools of social enterprise and social procurement to build an economy that puts people and planet first. Our ultimate goal is to make social enterprise and social procurement business as usual. So we want to see an economy where there's no such thing as social procurement because it's just procurement, and there's no such thing as social enterprise because it's just how business is done. So we've designed today to bring together the voices, the perspectives across social enterprise, across business and government for conversations about how we grow and scale this work. And that was the most common theme that I heard at the Social Enterprise World Forum in Amsterdam a few weeks ago. Was how do we supercharge growth? How do we take this work to the next level? It's all about scale. We've got fantastic, passionate people doing this work. How do we grow that and embed it across the economy? And how do we connect everyone who shares this agenda to do this work together? So that's what today is all about. We're really excited to have fantastic speakers joining us today. We have Daniel Molino from Federal Government, who sees the potential for social enterprise and social procurement to shape our economy and society. We have sessions around the latest trends and insights on social enterprise and social procurement. We'll dive into what's really happening in the social procurement space, lift that curtain and have a look at some of the barriers and how we overcome them, as well as the opportunities. We'll explore partnerships for scale, marketing, social enterprise, and international policy perspectives. So lots on. And just before we pass over to the next session, I want to acknowledge that our work to grow the Business for Good movement in Australia is possible thanks to our partners. Westpac Procurement and Westpac Foundation are supporting our summit today, and I've seen some of them here this morning. And they were also one of our founding members at Social Traders, leading the way on social procurement. Westpac recognises the opportunities that we've all got to collectively create better futures together. They've done fantastic work to partner with a wide range of social enterprises in their supply chain. And the Westpac Foundation has a strong legacy in supporting the development of the social enterprise sector. They've been supporting vulnerable communities for 140 years, and today they fund a range of capacity building programs for social enterprises to strengthen and scale. So just want to show a quick video to have a look at some of the work that they're doing and the impact they're creating, and a bit of a reminder for all of us about why we're here and why we do this work.
For some people experiencing disadvantage, it's often a meaningful job that can be the most powerful pathway out of that disadvantage. It adds value to lives by providing a sense of purpose, a feeling of belonging, and an opportunity to contribute to communities. But sadly, it's often those very people who face the highest barriers to employment. The good news is that there's a growing movement of businesses right across Australia who are doing remarkable work by tackling this challenge, by making it their mission to create meaningful, long-term jobs for people who need it the most. And it's those social enterprises that, for more than a decade, Westpac Foundation chooses to support.
I am neurodiverse, and my previous work hadn't enabled me to make the most of my strengths or who I am. ASA has given me stability and a better future, and feel empowered and appreciated.
Working with Green Connect has been a hugely important stepping stone in me becoming and feeling like an Australian. It made me feel like I was part of the community.
We believe we can create greater impact through long-term partnerships. We've walked alongside partners like Jigsaw to help them scale and grow their impact.
Partnerships with foundations and trusts like the Westpac Foundation go way beyond philanthropic donations, grants. We've really seen the strength and the beauty of the partnership really come to life around a shared vision of a different world, and in working together in a myriad of ways to make that happen.
We've set a goal that our support will help grant partners generate 10,000 jobs by 2030. We're committed to helping jobs-focused social enterprises to grow through a range of financial and non-financial support programs. Because the stronger these social enterprises become, the greater impact that they can have on the lives of people that need it the most.
I never get sick of watching that one and the videos like it that show the real impact that the work that we collectively do has on people's lives. You know, such a huge change and opportunity that it opens up for them. And it's really great to see Westpac's mission there to create 10,000 jobs by 2030. And it's great to say that they're already halfway there in that objective. They've just launched their For Good gift catalogue for those that are getting ready for Christmas shopping. I said Christmas. Yep, it's upon us before we know it. So for those that are wondering where to get gifts this year, obviously have a look to social enterprises who've got some beautiful products for you to buy and pass on. So thank you to Westpac and Westpac Foundation for supporting the summit and helping us to bring together the trailblazers, leading the charge in business for good. And I would just also like to acknowledge Social Enterprise Australia and the state social enterprise networks that are here with us today and that join us in the work that we do and are key collaborators for Social Traders. We have a heart set of collaboration at Social Traders. That's how we talk about it, you know, acknowledging that if we are serious about making social enterprise and social procurement business as usual, we can't do that by ourselves. We need to work with everyone else in the sector. In the mosaic of this picture future economy that we want to create, we all have a part to play, and the state social enterprise networks and Social Enterprise Australia as the peaks are really key in that work. So thank you for supporting the summit, and thank you for supporting and working with us in the work to grow the sector. Okay, well, I hope you're all looking forward to getting into an action-packed afternoon. So I'll let us get started with our first session.
Terrific. Thanks very much, Tara. Look, for those of you who have been in the sector for a long time, it's probably felt like our endless government conversations, particularly at federal government level, have fallen on deaf ears for a really long time. Many of us, myself included, probably stopped getting on planes and flying to Canberra, somewhere in the last 10 years. But something fundamentally has shifted in this last couple of years. I even got on a plane earlier this year with some of you to go to Canberra. And I want to just say how wonderful it was to see the sector so warmly invited into Parliament House. And one of the people who was there to invite us and welcome us was Dr. Daniel Molino. Daniel is the chair of the House of Representatives Standing Economics Committee. And goodness, he knows about putting purpose into the economy. After completing his PhD in economics from Yale, he then went on to be an economic advisor in the Gillard government and then a Victorian MP before heading off to Canberra to join the Commonwealth government. I also really want to thank him for recently bringing his committee hearings to Melbourne so he could hear from even more social enterprises. And Daniel, as someone who appeared before your committee, I want to thank you for your commitment to hearing us. Again and again, we've seen you balancing people and planet and profit in your work, both in the electorate, and I'm in the electorate right beside you, so I see that loud and clear, but also across the wider country. So it's terrific to see you again. Welcome, Daniel. We can't wait to hear what you say.
Oh, thanks very much, Beck. And I must say that I had a case study relating to street in my speech, even without knowing that you'd be introducing me. So that's a nice coincidence. But look, can I begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging? Can I thank Desmond for his very warm acknowledgement of country and acknowledge his words, and also Beck's in relation to what happened on October 14. As an MP where the voice got up in my electorate, and as an MP where we had 500 registered volunteers, a remarkable number, and far more than the level of engagement that we get in a typical or any federal election that I've seen. There were some silver linings, and I suppose that now's a difficult time to talk about silver linings, but I do very much agree with Desmond's mindset of looking to the future. From little things, big things will grow. And I suppose if we look at the last few decades, I think the trajectory has been forward, but undoubtedly there have been backward steps along the way. And unfortunately, October 14 was one of them. But I'm very confident that the Indigenous community, its leaders, and the broader community will be able to walk a positive journey going forward. But again, just thank you to Desmond for your willingness to come here and acknowledge country today and your warm words. So can I acknowledge Beck, Miranda, and of course Tara, and all the other members from Social Traders who are here today. And I think Social Enterprise Australia is also involved in today, and many other organisations. And all of the, I understand there are hundreds of individuals and organisations online. It's a remarkable gathering and reflects the incredible diversity and strength of the sector. And I suppose the theme of my contribution is going to be that the sector has achieved a remarkable amount over recent decades, but that there is the potential to do so much more with the right regulatory settings and the right partnerships with governments at all levels. My history with this social policy area is not particularly long, but it goes back around a decade, back to my time as a state MP, and we were exposed to some of the social enterprise regulatory arrangements in the UK. And that was an eye-opener for a lot of MPs and advisors and ministers in the Victorian government. And we realised that there was this huge sector already flourishing in Victoria and nationally, which we didn't know that much about, but also that there were ways in which government could positively engage with the sector. And over a period of a couple of years, that led to a range of things, including the development of an accreditation arrangement and the social procurement framework that in Victoria has since that time led to so much positive gain. And of course, Queensland has gone down a similar path in the meantime. And so for me, it's been a journey over the last 9 years or so, where I feel as though I've been exposed both to what's going on in the sector, but also increasingly to the opportunities that there are for governments to partner. Now, of course, there's all the numbers that you know better than me, that there are over 12,000 social enterprises. They contribute $21 billion plus to the economy and employ over 200,000 people. I mean, there's also all of the innovation that goes on in the sector. One of the social enterprises that gave evidence to my committee was Yumi, which is an enterprise that deals with food recycling and helping the environment through reducing food waste. And it's developed an incredibly innovative digital inventory system. So there's innovation in the sector also, right across the board, whether it be Yumi's example or some of the innovation in the employment and transitioning of people in employment pathways who come from very vulnerable backgrounds. So there's all of those pluses that the sector already demonstrates. And for me, it's useful to step back occasionally and think about, what does that represent? And for me, it represents the fact, as Tara said, that our economy and our society is a mosaic. And there is something particular about social enterprises. They are businesses, and in that sense are a bit different to many purely philanthropic business enterprises. They're businesses that generate revenue, that are sustainable, but that also have a social purpose embedded in their organizational DNA. And it's that combination, to me, which creates something very powerful and creates an operating model that means that social enterprises can do things that I think in many contexts other organizations can't, whether that be in relation to the environment, whether it be in relation to employment outcomes. I think that combination of building an organization as a sustainable ongoing business, but also having a broader social purpose embedded in that organization creates something very powerful and very different. And as Tara said, it creates an important part of the broader mosaic of our economy and our society. The sector has achieved so much, as I mentioned, but I think it is now a good time to think about how to leverage for more. And part of that will be about partnering with government, but of course there's much more than just that. There's so much that the sector is and can do more of itself. But I want to make a couple of observations about parts of the strategy that the sector is working on that I think dovetail with government. One is, in a sense, a bit dry, but I think it does underpin everything and is important to at least note, and that's data. Data, I think, underpins everything, both in terms of understanding yourself as an organisation, but also in being able to communicate that to external stakeholders, whether that be government or others. And I do know that the sector is working on ways in which to gather data and analyse that data in a way in which it can make its case to government even more powerfully than it currently does. And of course, one of the challenges, I think, of the sector is that it achieves so much on so many dimensions. So many organisations might have a goal that's environmental, but at the same time, they're employing people from a vulnerable background. One of the challenges, I think, is that it can be difficult to figure out what data to actually measure and to highlight when many organisations are achieving along so many dimensions. And secondly, it can be difficult to figure out how to collect and analyse data when so much of what an organisation achieves might be over the very long term and difficult to measure and clearly identify. Now, I think these are all challenges that can be overcome. And I think that one of the ways in which the sector is looking to do that is to start with a series of measures that are simple, easily measurable, and then that you can compare across many organisations. And so I simply wanted to highlight that I think what the sector is doing in relation to data is really important and really powerful, and it's going to be a work in progress. It's going to require some iteration, but I think the sector is really heading in the right direction there. The second piece of a broader strategy that I wanted to touch on today is certification, which was so important in Victoria. And I know from evidence we received also Queensland. this underpins so much as well. It's very difficult for government to engage with the sector unless it knows quite precisely the contours of the sector and who is in it. But even more so, it's very difficult for government to encourage others, such as subcontractors, to partner with the sector unless there is a very clear definition of who is in the sector. So in a sense, certification creates a verification of which organisations are genuinely social enterprises, but also at a very practical level, it creates a Rolodex so that organisations that want to partner with the sector can actually have a list of organisations they can look up and engage with. I wanted to touch on procurement. Procurement's obviously so important, and just touching on my experience in Victoria, another case study that I wanted to touch on was Yarraview Nursery, an amazing social enterprise that employs over 100 people, 85 with a disability. That number might be higher now, 120,000 hours a year. As part of the Victorian government's social procurement framework, Yarraview Nursery received work through a range of projects on the Mernda Rail line, the Mernda Rail project, the Southern and Northeastern Program Alliance, and a number of level crossing removals. This complemented a lot of their existing commercial contracts, which were very positive, but led to very volatile cash flows. It supplemented that with very stable government cash flows and enabled them to hire a material number of extra employees. So for me, this is a great case study of the power of social procurement when you get it right. I think social procurement is, as we explore it at the federal level, going to be something that we need to look at through a series of steps. I think certification, as I mentioned earlier, will be one of the first steps. I think there may be opportunities for social enterprises to partner with government in a range of areas for payments for outcomes in ways that some probably do already. But sometimes I think we need to probably think about ways in which we can make our payments for outcomes arrangements better suited to social enterprises. So one area is employment services, where there's clearly an opportunity, I think, for partnering to be boosted. There are so many social enterprises that work on the very difficult parts of the employment market. And I think we need to think hard about whether or not the incentive structures, the payment structures are appropriately set up in order to give social enterprises reward for what they do. And again, you look at Street as an example, providing employment opportunities, but looking at providing opportunities for young people who have offended, young people at risk of dropping out, some of the people in our society, both who face the most challenging circumstances to connect with long-lasting and ongoing employment opportunities. But also when you look at it in the longer term, where there's a positive outcome, it has the biggest long-term social payoffs. And so to me, it's a good example of where even before we possibly get to a whole of government social procurement framework, my sense is there are opportunities in spaces like this for improved payments for outcomes arrangements to reflect some of the amazing outcomes that social enterprises are achieving. I think another way to think about it is that, again, in some contexts, it will be possible to break up work in a way that enables social enterprises to participate. And again, I go back to Yarraview Nursery as an example. Breaking up the work of a project like a level crossing removal so that parts of it can be done by social enterprises does potentially add a bit more transaction cost, but I think that can be more than outweighed by the benefits of higher competition and greater long-term social benefits. And I think there are sometimes when we need to think a bit more flexibly about how we package goods. Now, of course, the government already is very aware of the need to think about that in the context of SME procurement. And I think maybe that's a starting point where we can think about ways in which with large and medium sized projects, we can think about better ways to break off chunks of that work and give more opportunities for social enterprises to participate. And there are so many examples that we've already seen of that in Victoria and also Queensland. So they're just a few very brief observations on procurement. Of course, there's also the vision which the sector is rightly putting forward of social procurement in a whole of government sense. But I think there are a number of steps along the way that we can look at which will produce real benefits and give momentum to the agenda. I think I've already exceeded my time, but I just wanted to point to the fact that the employment white paper pointed out a number of important policy areas, one of which was to deepen ties with social enterprise in order to support economic development. As the white paper states, social enterprises are critical to improving employment outcomes for marginalised cohorts in local communities across Australia. So that was a very important reference in that paper. And in the House of Economics review that Beck mentioned, we've received a really impressive set of submissions and very impressive evidence, I would say, through testimony and right across the board from both some of the peak bodies such as Social Traders and Social Enterprise Australia, from social enterprise networks at the state level, but also from a whole range of social enterprises. And the committee was very aware that we were only scratching the surface, of course, in talking to, say, half a dozen social enterprises, but all of the ones we talked to were remarkable organisations and did give the committee a real sense of what the sector as a whole is achieving. So that was very important evidence. And I think the committee now has to think about what it recommends as next steps. So I just want to conclude by saying that the sector has achieved so much. There are 12,000 organisations. There are so many people employed. All of those kinds of big economic aggregates that, as somebody who works in the economic side of government, I love citing about everything. But there is also something much more profound that we need to also always remember, that there's something about social enterprises which is different to the other organisations that operate in so many of the fields that social enterprises operate, that there is something so important in our society about having organisations where social purpose is so embedded in their purpose, in the way they operate, in the way they deal with their employees and their clients. And I just want to finish by saying that I think that the sector has a very bold and ambitious and appropriate strategy for moving forward. And I think a key part of that needs to be thinking about ways in which we can partner together to achieve even more in the future. Thanks very much for the chance to speak today.
Thanks so much for joining us. Really brilliant.
And also, it's great. Does it block out?
Have you here? Oh, we've got some background voices joining us as well while people are muting. Incredible to have you not just here today, but as a champion for the sector, and as Beck mentioned at the beginning, you've been doing this work for 9 years. You are a leader in Victoria that helped get the social procurement framework off the ground, which has been an absolute game changer for the sector and given us a proof of concept that we can then use to look at in other places. The conversations you've helped open up at federal government level for us to start to talk about what would a social procurement framework look like, how could we support the sector more broadly, the genuine passion that you've got for the work is what I feel so particularly grateful and thankful for, and absolutely wanting to partner with you to look at how we can supercharge the sector's growth from here, because social enterprises, as you said, are special. They are unique. They have a unique contribution in the mosaic of our economy, and we're really looking forward to continuing those conversations about what that could look like. But to jump us into the next session that we've got coming up now, speaking of data, we are as excited as you are around the opportunity for using data to help advocate for the needs of the sector, but to also help understand the sector, what makes it impactful, what makes it unique, and how we can grow it and develop it. So we are going to be joined by Royden Howie, who's the director of the Impact Institute. Royden has led not-for-profit organisations across the Asia-Pacific region before working in aged care and disability services in Australia, and later then founded the Impact Institute to encourage all organisations to become more impact-focused. So we're going to talk to you now about some of the latest trends in data that is shaping our work. Royden's going to share the latest finding from the Impact Institute's Social Impact Summit report that highlights broader societal trends impacting social enterprise and social procurement. And then I'll dive into the social traders data. So I'll be sharing our annual Profile of Australia's Certified Social Enterprises report. So this is the deepest and longest data set we've got on social enterprise in Australia. It's been collected over 6 years from over 1,600 social enterprise certifications. And as Daniel mentioned, we've picked 5 impact metrics that we track as the starting point for things that we can compare and contrast across social enterprises and across the sector. And I'll also be sharing our latest social procurement impact report, which is the data that we collect on social procurement, specifically with social enterprise, and what impact that's creating. So we're going to be taking some questions in this one. So have a think while we're chatting, put any questions in the chat, and there'll also be an opportunity to come off mute at the end and ask a question if you'd prefer to do it that way. But to kick us off, I will hand over to Royden.
Thanks, Tara, and thanks for the opportunity for being here. Thank you for the introduction. Today will just be a really quick fly through. The report that we're talking about actually hasn't been released yet, so you're just getting a quick preview of it today, and the full report will be released on November 14 in a few weeks' time. Before I start, I'd just like to acknowledge and pay my respects to the Gumaragal people, the traditional custodians of the land that I'm on today. In what I know and has been acknowledged by a few of our speakers already, has been an incredibly difficult year for many, many people. And we're very conscious of that still as an organisation and with the people that we're interacting with as well. The State of the Social Impact report that will be released in November aims to track Australia's progress in focusing on the long-term wellbeing of people and communities. Selena, I'm not having any luck changing the slides there. Thank you. As we focused on insights from the summit and more broadly across society in 2024, we chose to focus on 4 key themes, and they were rising inequality awareness across our society, the wellbeing economy, corporate efforts in ESG, and building constructive dialogues. These are all interconnected, but I'll just touch on them each briefly. A social enterprise can make an important contribution to all of them. In terms of a growing awareness of inequality, poverty, and entrenched disadvantage, we like to think of ourselves as an egalitarian society. However, increasingly we're not, and there is a growing awareness that we're not. We're approaching 30 years of economic growth in Australia, disrupted only by COVID, yet persistent intergenerational disadvantage remains. COVID over the short term helped many low-income earners, where with a big influx of people into the welfare system, we increased payments and saw their well-being improve. Post-COVID, we've withdrawn the extra payments, and along with that, there's been significant supply chain constraints that have driven inflation. So low-income earners have been faced with both higher costs for essentials with falling incomes. The wealthiest 20% of Australians now have over 200 times the assets of the poorest 20%. And the Australian Bureau of Statistics reports that 16.6% of Australian children still live below the poverty line. Inequality, where we see it, often follows social, demographic, and racial lines. Many of you may not be surprised to hear that of the 50 most disadvantaged communities in Australia, all of them are predominantly Indigenous. Is this the future that we want for our country? It will get worse unless we actively make decisions to change it. The second theme was around the wellbeing economy. We need to move beyond measuring success as a society and the success of our economy solely by our GDP. GDP doesn't distinguish between types of economic activity, whether they be positive or negative. It's distribution, whether the growth occurs for the rich or for the poor. It doesn't account for depletion of natural resources or many of the things that have no market price, but are actually the things that make our lives most worthwhile. It doesn't account for our relationships, our education, the quality and security of our institutions, and so on. We saw this recognised this year with the release of the Measuring What Matters report that builds on wellbeing economy momentum that's occurring around the world and builds on work done in Australian Treasury across all persuasions of government since the 1960s. The key focus of measuring what matters, though, is around building a society where people are healthy, a society that's cohesive, sustainable, prosperous, and secure. Thirdly, there was the corporate investment and efforts that are now going into ESG. There's a growing recognition of the importance of the S in the ESG. We work with a lot of organisations on what it means to be impact-driven, to work towards long-term sustainable positive change for people and communities beyond just traditional business measures of success. There's growing recognition in boardrooms that we all need to contribute to building a healthy society that sustains us all, not simply extracting from it, and that contribution goes significantly beyond just paying our taxes and complying with local laws. And the final area that we focused on this year was around building constructive dialogues. Disadvantage, abuse and neglect of people with a disability, abuse and neglect of seniors, corporate misbehaviour has been brought into focus through royal commissions and inquiries, and disadvantage amongst our First Nations has been brought into focus through some of the discussion around the voice. But these are big issues. Binary thinking and point scoring won't solve them. Can we talk about them as a community constructively and work towards shared solutions? Or are we simply going to divide along political lines, dumbing them down to binary propositions in the interests of political or interest groups? We need to be more willing to engage with nuance and complexity. All of us, whether in political circles, organisations, institutions, or in any form of leadership roles, need to take responsibility for changing the tone of the conversation and building a constructive dialogue. The health of our community depends upon it. So what are some of the key drivers that have been leading things in this direction? And Selena, if you don't mind just moving that on again. I'm just going to touch on a few of them very briefly because we've got a limited amount of time, but there's 8 that I've called out on the slide. I'm not going to speak to all of them. But employees are one of the drivers for organisations thinking in more in this direction. With a tight labour market, younger generations of employees are seeking jobs where they feel their employer values people, community and environment. So organisations that want to attract and retain the best staff are beginning to pay more attention to this. For customers, similarly, there's an increasing recognition that trust is key to long-term customer relationships. Customers are getting more vocal and willing to move their spending to align with their values. And companies are beginning to respond to this and need to continue moving to respond to this. Similarly, the economic environment with high inflation, higher interest rates, issues in housing affordability, many people are feeling worse off themselves, which is driving greater empathy for the circumstances of others and a greater desire for change. Similarly, there's been royal commissions that have drawn attention to mispractice across all different parts of society. There have been high-profile corporate failures across a range of different firms where we've seen issues from fees to no services, to failure of integrity, to damage and destruction of cultural heritage. All of these things are ultimately driving towards changes in regulations and standards. And we're beginning to see, as momentum builds, even changes in financial markets, where a new generation of leaders are increasingly looking at how they can deploy capital to drive social change and environmental agendas as well. And if we just move on one more there. As we seek to make progress to driving positive change, social enterprise can play a very important role. Out of the Social Impact Summit, when people were asked after 2 days of discussions about what their vision was for the future, people were looking for a world that was more equitable, inclusive, kind, that fostered connection, that gave a voice to the voiceless, and where we all play a role in investing in our community. Social enterprise can help the community and business respond to Australia's key social challenges and the key drivers of change we're experiencing. It can do this directly. There are many forms of social enterprise, but these include many that directly address disadvantage through their products or employment models, along with those that contribute significant amounts of profits back into broader community purposes. Social enterprise drives innovation around social challenges and provides market-based responses. Social enterprise can also play a really important role for the broader business and corporate sector. There are opportunities for corporates to work with social enterprises through their procurement, building partnerships, or investing directly into social enterprise to help social enterprises scale their impact. Doing so with a genuine commitment, measurement of results, and a strong communication plan can help build reputation and trust that contributes to staff recruitment and retention and growing and retaining customers. I'll now hand back to Tara, who will explore the trend in the social enterprise sector itself and dive into those in more depth.
Yeah, thanks, Royden. I hope everyone can hear me okay. The trends that you've outlined here just really echo some of the things that we're seeing at Social Traders as well in terms of drivers around how things are changing. So we're seeing investors now backing purpose in business. We're seeing consumers expecting it. Employees are getting excited about it, and regulators are starting to enforce it in increasing ways. And it was really inspiring at the Social Enterprise World Forum in Amsterdam to hear a change in tone from global corporate leaders. So previously, we hear a lot of talk around cost and risk and that as the perception of value in social procurement activity. But what we're hearing now is a change to talk about value exchange being two-way. So it's not just about the social enterprise winning a contract from a corporate, it's about the corporate benefiting from their ability to deliver on ESG commitments, diversity and inclusion, and social procurement, and to benefit from learning from the social enterprise. So this two-way knowledge transfer is now a trend we're starting to see, which is really exciting. So some of the comments that I heard at the forum in Amsterdam were things like social enterprises showcase what innovation is possible and what future business models can look like, that social enterprise is an incubation space for the future of the whole economy. Love that one. And that building relationships with social enterprise is a source of creativity and innovation, that they're the business models of the future. And these are the words of big global corporate brands that are now not only understanding what a social enterprise is, but looking in that direction to say, we've got something we can learn from these businesses that are so creative and innovative. So it's fantastic to see that shift happening. And at Social Traders, we collect, as I mentioned, data on our certified social enterprises. So when they come through to have the 3 checks that they are a social enterprise, that they have purpose embedded, generate most revenue from trade, and reinvest so that public benefit outweighs private benefit. As we do that, we collect 37 data points on every social enterprise. And when we look at that in aggregate, it shows us some really interesting things. So what we can see from our data is that 31% of the impact, the revenue that they generate, is reinvested into their impact. We also know that nearly half of the employees that work in social enterprises are people that would otherwise be shut out of the workforce. And importantly, of that investment into impact that they make, 77% of that is generated from business activity. So that means they're self-funding that impact that they're creating without relying on grants or donations. And 2 other favourite stats that I love is that social enterprises are larger on average than both charities and ABS listed businesses, and their close down rate is lower. So that little snapshot of just 5 things that we can see from our community of certified social enterprises is showing, the potential of this model and the things I hope you can keep in your back pocket when you're out there talking about social enterprise and why it's so exciting. So if we can just jump through some slides, Selena, who's our background event magician making all things happen. One of the things that also really excites us, if we can just skip through to the next slide, is that social enterprises are growing. So we're seeing really exciting change in the social enterprise sector. So most of the social enterprises that are certified with Social Traders have been set up in the last decade. So we're seeing just in the last few years, and this is, during COVID time, a huge influx of new businesses starting up as social enterprises. We're also seeing really exciting increases in the impact that social enterprises are creating, and that most of them are increasing or maintaining the revenue that they're generating year on year, which actually means that most of them are introducing new product and service lines, and also increasing the number of beneficiaries or people that would otherwise be shut out of work or would otherwise not have access to opportunities. Increasing numbers of people are being supported. So that, says really exciting things to us about the power of the social enterprise model, and the fact that it really is catching on and taking off. And what we then do with social procurement, that's our lever that we work at Social Traders to look at how we can continue to supercharge this growth of the social enterprise sector. So if we can skip through to that slide, looks like we're having a little bit of trouble with slide transitions. So you're just getting a slight lag, which is a good memory jogger for all of you to see some of the things coming through after we've talked about them. But if we get to one of my favourite graphs, which shows us the trajectory of social procurement over time at Social Traders. Here we go. What this shows us is three things. So first of all, in the light blue bar there, we can see the growth in the number of business and government members that are joining Social Traders to do social procurement work. Then we can see in the yellow the number of social enterprises that are being certified and engaging with business and government in social procurement work. And then the best part of this graph is that orange trend line across the top, because that is the spend that's happening between business and governments and certified social enterprises. And that's growing at 55% on average every year. And that's a total of over $600 million that has been spent with certified social enterprises through business and governments engaging in this agenda. So if we can skip to the next slide, what we're seeing is really fantastic changes in the reasons why business and government members are engaging in social procurement. So I mentioned that acknowledgement of a two-way value transfer. What we're also seeing is there's three broad motivations for business and governments engaging in social procurement, being around initially a policy driver or regulation, that they were having to do it, through to doing it for competitive advantage, through to doing it for a genuine commitment to ESG or sustainability, often a personal connection to wanting to create impact for particular cohorts in our communities. That's shifting from originally it was around the policy driver and doing it because we have to, right through now to doing it because businesses want to, because they see the value of this. And we had a fantastic conversation with a member just this week of someone saying, well, we were doing it originally because the policy said we needed to, but now we want to do it for real. Can you help us really embed this right across our organisation, because we see this as a really key opportunity. And that motivation change is leading to what you can see on this slide around the growth in social procurement activity from our members. They're increasing their connections with social enterprises, they're increasing the categories that they're buying from, and ultimately they're increasing their social procurement spend. 71% of members increasing spend year on year, which is really fantastic to see. And we don't want to stop here. So on the next slide, we can see the trajectory of growth that we hope we can achieve and the impact we can create. So if we look at here, I mentioned at Social Traders, we track 5 impact metrics, and they're the ones that we know apply to the majority of social enterprises and we can track over time. So from FY18 to 22, we can see there's nearly 5,000 jobs, employment outcomes created for people that would otherwise be shut out of work. And if we skip through these slides here, there's nearly 700,000 hours of training that's been delivered. There is a huge investment into community goods and services, nearly $44 million. There's $8.5 million in charitable donations to charitable causes through social enterprise, and 16,000 tonnes of waste diverted from landfill. So this is why we do this work, and what's fantastic about the data we collect through certification is we can track this as a sector and track it over time. So we can start to see how it's changing, which helps us all make the case about why we need to do more of this work and back social enterprise, which on the next slide shows where we hope we can take this over the long term. So we're seeing the darker blue bars on the left is what we've done so far. The light blue bars on the right, lighter coloured bars on the right, that's where we want to take it from here. So we hope by 2030 that we can have $5.5 billion spent with certified social enterprises from business and government members. And we have real faith that that's possible because 86% of businesses agree that social procurement is only going to grow. And 84% of our social enterprises that are certified are saying that social procurement is becoming more familiar to those outside the sector. So we're seeing this change happen. So this is thanks to everyone in this room, and congratulations to everyone that's been part of this growth, because everyone plays a part in this, and it's only as a collective that we can see this really grow with support from government and people like Dr. Daniel Molino backing it, but also all the businesses in this space and the social enterprises working on those partnerships to make social procurement activity happen. So I'm going to pause there, and we might have a tiny bit of time for some questions. if you do want to ask one, just raise your hand, and our session hosts, you can see Jess and Sheridan in the background there, will help you out with that, or just drop one into the chat if you've got something you'd like to ask.
Tara, looks like we've got Gillian Turnbull with a raised hand there. So we might go over to you, Gillian.
Jump in.
Thank you very much, and thanks for sharing the presentation. I just wanted to pick up on the outcome that you talked about in terms of diverting waste from landfill. And I'm keen to understand this area of environmental impact in a bit more detail. I think there's lots and lots of social enterprises that focus on social impact and environmental impact, but correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there's as many that focus only on environmental impact. And I'm curious to understand, how do we get more environmental organisations to become accredited so that they actually can be counted as social enterprises and therefore count towards government spend, for example? Because I do think the environmental elements of a lot of this, of the social procurement framework, are not seen as important as the social outcomes. And I think it's there's a real opportunity for us to really grow that space.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, absolutely, and particularly given, you know, global and Australian trends around us with the push for environmental outcomes. So we absolutely want to grow the number of social enterprises that are working in this space that do get certified, because there's a lot out there that aren't yet certified, and so we're not able to count those metrics. We're also looking at how we, into next year, expand some of the impact metrics that we collect to look at what else we can collect from an environmental perspective, because waste diverted from landfill is one metric, but there are others that we want to explore as well. And hopefully in doing that, we can start to then create a bigger conversation around the environmental impact of social enterprise. That will then draw others into that conversation and to come and get certified as well, so we can expand the community over time. But yes, it's one of those how can we grow it bigger questions, which applies to all of the work that we do. You know, it's a focus for us. We're always working on that. But yeah, that's a specific lens that we can take a look at.
Thanks, Tara.
It looks like we also have Nidhi participating with a hand up. Nidhi, would you like to ask your question?
Hi, and thanks, and lovely to see so many familiar faces on here. Really loved the presentation so far. I have a question in regards to, I guess, the social enterprise environment in Australia, and I guess relating even back to philanthropy, which has been traditionally quite heavily influenced by white people, and within the social enterprise space as well. I'm still, you know, trying to see where the diversity, like the impact within marginalized communities as well, but also having the leadership within that space from marginalized people as well. And even the element of social enterprise, I mean, if we look back, First Nations people have been building social enterprises for thousands of years. So is this something that Social Traders works towards?
Absolutely, and we would, you know, recognising, as we said at the beginning, Aboriginal leaders across the country and those Aboriginal leaders working in the social enterprise space, hugely important for us to do that, which is why we've just done the review of our certification framework to make sure that it is accessible for Aboriginal social enterprises, First Nations people-led social enterprises. So there's some new recommendations that have come from that we're going to implement in the next couple of months. And absolutely, you know, diversity is something that we would love to see more of in the sector, in the country, in the world, but it's front of mind for us at Social Traders. We've just released our new diversity and inclusion policy, you know, speaking for our organisation personally, but it's a big part of our work across the sector as well, for sure. And I'm really conscious of time, and I know there's probably a few more questions. One's in the, if you've got a burning question, pop it in the chat and we'll answer it there. But I think we do need to keep skipping through because we've got a packed agenda for today.
We certainly do, Tara. So thank you everyone for that, all your valuable contributions there. We have lots of information to share with you, including that PACE report. So please jump on our website to read further, and we'll look forward to talking more about these important topics. We've now reached the point of the summit where we are doing a bit of a choose your own adventure. So everybody sit tight with your fingers at the ready to press on the breakout room that you would like to go into. So I'm just going to quickly whip through what we've got going on. So first of all, in room 1, which is this room, so stay here. If you want to join the session on international policy perspectives with our very own Alex Hook, Executive Director of Advocacy and Engagement with Social Traders, Rochelle Wallens, who is the Social Procurement Manager of Akina Foundation, and Emma Ranitz, who's the Communication Manager of Bi-Social Canada. I'll be facilitating that discussion, and we will be talking about international policy perspectives on social procurement and social enterprise. Room number 2 is a masterclass in converting your procurement spend into impact. So breaking down the barriers in social procurement with Monique Ward, who is our Executive Director of Innovation and Services, and Mel Raby, the fabulous Mel Raby, who is Social Procurement and Inclusion Manager with John Holland. And together they'll be unpacking what's really happening when you're facing barriers in social procurement and how you can start approaching them. Room 3 is social impact marketing. So great for social enterprises looking to successfully master your market position. And this is with certified social enterprise brand masters Who Gives a Crap, Homie, The Social Story, and Brand Kind. So learn from experts in impact marketing. They'll be sharing their insights and understanding how to target your audience, impact storytelling, and the tools and techniques to help you achieve your marketing goals. Room 4 is partnering for scale, so place-based approaches for growing impact. This is the session supported by the Westpac Foundation, facilitated by Rebecca Green, who is our Head of Social Procurement Services, who will be joined by Luella Forrest, who is the General Manager of the Purpose Precinct down here at the Queen Vic Market, and Sammy Jetson, who is the Business Development Project Manager at the Christie Centre, who has a great new enterprise in Mildura. This session will explore collaboration on place-based social enterprises, lessons learned, and future potential for social enterprises to scale with similar opportunities in other locations. So we're going to have to move pretty quick just to regain some time in the agenda. You'll see the breakout room pop up shortly.